Barabbas was cooler than Jesus. And for the record, we know that the name of the Messiah was not actually Jesus in that day, as there was no letter J. But there are different theories as to the origins of the subsequent name Jesus. We do know that his name in our current tongue would be Yeshua, or one of the more precise translations from our original Hebrew tongue. So, that being said, who was Barabbas? Barabbas was a rebel. Barabbas led a rebellion against Rome, a rebellion against the status quo and the dominant culture who had the Hebrews under oppression. Barabbas was eventually brought up on charges of murder by the Roman authorities. And as the incident goes, there was one time of the season when, according to the Hebrew culture, at Passover, there was one prisoner allowed to be released. There was their very own Messiah, Yeshua, next to Barabbas there, both set for lynching, both accused of crimes against the state. The Pharisees and the scribes went amongst the people and influenced the crowd that, when the time came to choose, that they would choose to free Barabbas and to crucify Yeshua. Now, Barabbas was a Hebrew, just as Yeshua was a Hebrew. Two kinds of rebels from amongst the oppressed people. Take note. For some reason, the people respected Barabbas more than Christ. And I want to know why. And I think I do. So let us analyze this thing and bring it forward to our times. Let's get it. Jesus and Barabbas, two different kinds of rebel. For simplicity's sake, we will cite the quintessential dichotomies of rebel as place markers here, though we know this is a spectrum and not fixed positions. It's not always all or nothing. Some people are on one end of the spectrum or on the other, but most people are, nuanced rebels somewhere along this spectrum throughout the journey of their lives. On one end, there's the spiritual or intellectual rebel who seeks to conquer the culture and the mind, primarily. On the other end, we have the forceful rebel who seeks to conquer by outright violence and impose order by force. Barabbas, well, he was a rebel who relied ultimately on more physical means, being that he spearheaded a violent rebellion. The violence and carnal logic being the ultimate tools of his warfare. His rebellion, while it could be said to be against Rome, was the kind that the authorities put down rather easily. And since it relied on physical rebellion as the ultimate weaponry, it proved inferior to the firepower of the Roman Empire and thus less of a threat to Rome. Yeshua was another level of rebel, though. By waging spiritual warfare against Rome, preaching the dominion of the kingdom of Yahweh, the God of Israel. His warfare struck at the very heart of the Roman Empire, not just as a physical empire, but as a culture, as religious practice, the hearts and the minds of the people. You see, the Hebrews at the time had been under generations of oppression, those perverted practices of the pagan culture assaulting their consciousness. Rome was a hypersexualized society that was heavy in the porn industry and the graphic murder industry, with their public orgies, statues of phallic symbols everywhere, pedophilia, and the murderous circuits of colosseums where Hebrews and others were forced to engage in bloody battle. Are you not entertained? You see, Yeshua reminded his people of who they were, himself being of the tribe of Judah, threatening to have his people come out of the psychological bondage of Rome and the paganism to become the leaders of the free world that they were called to be. Everything that he stood for was, by default, against everything that Rome stood for, paganism and all its trappings. You see, Yeshua's war was for the minds and the souls of the masses. Hence, Yeshua was a greater threat to that evil empire than any physical sword that a man like Barabbas could take up. The problem with carnal warfare is that if the warrior becomes frustrated or defeated, that energy and frustration can then be misdirected and become indiscriminate violence. This is like having the physical prowess but losing the mind and the morality to guide it. Barabbas, once taken by the authorities, could be used also as a beacon of revolution in the eyes of the people, thereby gaining preferential treatment. This is another reason that the authorities would allow Barabbas to roam free amongst the people, while the true revolutionary languishes in prison or in the grave or is lynched, aka hanged on a tree. You ever wonder why some folks seem to get away with murder while the realest ones get canceled and locked up, even though they hadn't done anything nearly as bad? What would be some modern day examples of Barabbas and Yeshua following this order? Now, just for the record, obviously I'm not saying that the following examples are Barabbas or Jesus or should be considered on the same level as Yeshua, but I'm following the order, the character, or part of the character. I'm using them as examples of the nature of the warfares, examples for you to think about it. The Crips. Do you know that when the Crips first came to be, that word meant community, revolution, and progress? They were a revolutionary entity. What happened? The Bloods. What happened? Brotherly love overrides and overcomes destruction. Kind of ironic when you look today. And this is not to judge, or it's not to even say that as a whole those aren't our people, or they're inherently bad based on the neighborhood or set some people may grow up in. But it's just an overall example of sometimes at the best intentions, besides the best intentions, a lot of that revolutionary energy that would otherwise be against the system can turn into less of a sniper situation into more of a shotgun or a hand grenade, and putting in danger the ones that you love most, the ones closest to you. And a lot of our wayward institutions, we should say, that are grassroots, like vice lords, disciples, etc., had noble beginnings, but were, one could say, co-opted, became misguided, became disheartened. So when you contrast that to, let's say, Public Enemy or an X-Clan or even a Nas, not the little one, Nas, the original Nas, no, not the other one. These are more of a threat to the evil establishment in a lot of ways because of their moral grounds and their mind over matters approach, how they refuse to delve in some of the traditional violence and some of the preachings that are prevalent in the rap industry nowadays. Case in point, NWA. Now, while they were rebellious in a sense, they took more of a wanton rebellion approach. Fuck the police and I'll blast them motherfuckers. while rebellious in direct nature would arguably be more like Barabbas and his loyal followers coming against the organized army of Rome and all its mercenaries, all those soldiers and munitions. This is why, in hindsight, the music industry, like the scribes and the Pharisees that went amongst the people to influence them, hey, pick Barabbas. The music industry, like those scribes and Pharisees, they offered the cruder rebel of gangsta rap over the more spiritual rebel of the intellectual, of the public enemy of the day. When the question was asked, "Who will ye have amongst thee? Who shall we release?" the people, based on those campaigns of the media, of those evil scribes, said, "Give us gangsterism," and lynch the conscious rappers. Give us Barabbas. The rebellious enemy of the entire generation was derailed. At first to say, the police, but then, by extension, yo, them up the block, they just everybody. This was the bait and switch. I think at the time Barabbas was one of them cool niggas at the end of the day, and the people respected his gangster. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's on another level. You see, Yeshua, next to Barabbas, looked like one of them questionable Negroes at the time. One who preached all this unity and let's turn back to the Most High Yah. But nobody had seen him put in that work like Barabbas had. Barabbas had actually took his sword, to the task. So going with the flow of the media amongst them, it was natural to pick Barabbas and lynch that other dude. This is my take on the question of why. Why would the people choose the better gangster over the most gangster Negro of all time? Yeshua, hands down, wears the crown. The one who, while trying to fulfill his destiny and purpose in the Most High Yah, got the most hate from the government, from the media, and ultimately from his own people. Now you know what I think, but more importantly, what do you think? And more importantly still, out of the examples, Barabbas and Yeshua that walk amongst you in your daily life and even those up on the stage, who do you choose? Who do you give a pass to? And whom do you shout?
Get him up out of here.
Crucify him. Think about it.